Hello, I'm Destiny Babjack and I go by DB. I've had the pleasure of getting familiar with the open source community this past year. It was nearly 1 year ago today that I accepted a role with a Fortune 5 organization to lead an open source program office. And they hired me specifically, not because I was a technologist or a data scientist or had a doctorate in science, and all of that is true. But they wanted me because I could build a community. And we're still working on that journey with my fantastic team today. But what I want to talk to you about today is a paradigm shift. I've been pouring through the literature and the materials around the open source community now for a while, and I've come across a lot of information about open source for everyone, and I fully endorse that. I think that if we start with open source first, we may find great benefit. But I want to talk about how open source should be by everyone, and for today's purposes, I am going to focus on one portion of the for everyone curve to contribute to open source. If I were to ask you who you think should be contributing to open source, who might you say? Is it you? Is it your boss? Is it a great engineer? Is it only the great engineers that should contribute to open source? I feel like that may be a pervasive idea in this culture, that we wait until something is good enough to put it out into the open source community. And in a similar vein, we wait until we are good enough to put ourselves in the open source community. You're never going to be good enough. It's not because you are not already fantastic. It is because you will always be looking at the next bar from where you are today. You will always want to wait until the next skill is mastered before you put yourself into that open source community. So I want to challenge you to say that there are two main groups of contributors, or there should be, to open source, and those should be coders and non-coders. I don't even want to talk about master coders versus novice coders, and for today's talk, I'm not even going to focus on coders. But those are the two categories of people or professions or mindsets that it takes to build an open source community. So we have those who are non-coders and those who are coders. And for the most part, I want you to think of these as a reciprocal relationship. So we have those who are generating the code, and then those who are doing two really important things for the code and the code base that we want to push forward. Championing those efforts and making them known, and and then testing their quality, making sure they work. And those are two really important things. I think one of the big takeaways for me in this journey that I've taken leading an open source organization is that you can have the best technical product sitting on your shelf. And I would argue that I have seen some of the best technical solutions in the world, absolutely phenomenal things. But if you cannot get other people to understand what you're doing, if you cannot get other people to recognize what you're doing, if you can't connect with other people and get them excited about your work, you're likely not to be as successful as you could be if you had. And the talent set for coders and non-coders are often different. I've often found that coders can be these phenomenal unicorn employees who are, or talented artists who are both just in the trenches hackers and then phenomenal purple people, if you will. But these just phenomenal designers and articulators and project managers and scrum masters and all of the things that it takes for a successful project. And if you sit back for a second and think about what I just said, I just asked you to have expert knowledge in at least half a dozen or more functional areas to get an open source project out the door properly, let alone grow a community of support around it. Now we can add social media influencer, cheerleader, community advocate. It is rare that all of those skills would sit within one individual. It's also rare that those skills would sit within one community. So it's going to take a community to build success for our open source projects, to also build our community of open source. And I think coders have a relatively fair roadmap of how they can contribute in the open source space. The one thing I would like to mention there before I begin, as I'm trying to really advocate for this message, open source by everyone, is this. You are ready to contribute today. Where you are in your journey is exactly where you need to be helpful to the collective effort to drive technology forward collaboratively at scale. Where you are today is where you need to be to contribute to open source. There isn't another skill you need. There's one thing you need to do as a coder. Register with github.com. Create a user ID, and your journey shall begin. And I will tell you a couple of ways today that you get to toe dip with code and what I'm calling the non-coders. But I do have another talk for another day on how coders can contribute to open source, all coders across the continuum of coding maturity. Today I'm going to talk about non-coders. Why non-coders? Why wouldn't open source be built exclusively by our master coders? Think about it. Do they have time? Is that the best use of their time? Are they able to do everything for a project that a project needs to be successful? The answer might be no. If you go scour GitHub, you can find examples of projects that at face value, at first inspection, might not make sense to you, might not be appetitive. Inside that repository might be the secret sauce to some problem that we are experiencing, but you might not know it because something about how it's constructed there makes it inaccessible. One of the projects I was reviewing recently had a title for it of what it was, and then you look inside, and I looked inside the README, and to explain what it did, it provided its title again. This is not the best way for something to tell us what it does. Providing the name in the definition is a poor way to explain a construct. Non-coders will make open source accessible to the non-experts. And that's really important because open source isn't built just for expert coders. It needs to be built for all coders and all users of open source. There's a roadblock in the way, making open source idealistically a fantastic idea, but in practice, a very inaccessible world. It's built by some of the brightest people in the world, maintained by those bright people, but not built with the base user typically in mind. Now, there are examples, great successful projects that are built this way, often with very large support teams. But I guarantee you on that support team is one of the people I'm about to talk about. Non-coders. In our community growing activities in my organization, a lot of people say, well, I'm not a great coder yet, so I can't contribute to open source. And although I did already address that, let me tell you a few ways that you can contribute to open source. We're going to cover these high-level categories: writing, designing, testing, using, mentoring, advocating, and organizing. Let's begin. A lot of the world today in repositories is English. If you know two languages, English being one of them, and you can translate or speak another language and the repository is written there and you can translate out again, translate. Provide alternate translations to make the documentation more accessible in GitHub. Loved a project? Write a blog about it. Get the voice out there to advocate for that project. Refine the documentation. I'll talk just on this alone. My organization actually is working on creating an open source template. There are plenty of them available out there, but good documentation is your way to make a first impression with your project. I like to say that that you should have a beautiful README, all of the things that you need, all the essential files inside your repository, but also an external facing website, a great demo, a few blogs. There's a path to success. But if you can refine documentation, if you can write well and have enough technological curiosity and the ability to create a GitHub account, you can start helping people write better documentation. You can write tutorials. If you happen to be able to also be a user and go install the software, you can take screenshots along the way, write step-by-step tutorials on how to install and use that piece of software. If you have a great experience with that particular code base, you can... Hi, Samson. We're going to have to cut that out now. Hi. If you have a great experience with a particular code base, you can 3, 2, 1. If you have a great experience with a particular code, you may post about it on social media or even the inner events in your organization to promote them and create more power behind them. You can write newsletters about all the technical work that's being done inside the open source community in your organization. You can talk about all the internal projects that are successful. We've learned that one of the hardest things to do is keep aware of all of the open source projects that are being created. Design. You're not a coder, or maybe you're a beginner coder, but you are a great designer. You love designing. Can you create a logo? Almost all open source projects have a great logo. Can you design swag? Can you design merchandise for their use at conferences, or stickers and badges for their use as reward items to contributors in their community? Can you design a marketing and comm strategy for that project? Depending on the size of the project, this can be a needed feature. Can you build them a website, an external-facing public website that is easily accessible to everyone around the world, that is a mirror or a companion to the GitHub repository? Can you create video content? So video content might be podcasts. It also might be instructional videos. It could also be user features. That is very labor-intensive work. So if that's something that you find interesting, I guarantee you there's an entire community of open source users and developers who would be happy to have you volunteer time on their project. Can you report bad UI, UX experiences. Maybe what you're really good at is knowing when something doesn't feel right. So if you happen to open, let's say, Microsoft Edge and visited the package or the website, and things looked off to you and you didn't feel like that was the intended experience, you can reach out and tell them, hey, this is a bug, I think. Because we don't always develop and test on every browser or configuration. So even if you don't want to if all you want to do is report issues, that's helpful. Okay, move on to testing and using. This is where we're starting to get a little further down the maturity pipeline, I would say. So here you can use the software. That involves installing. Again, if you have any issues with installation, you can report that as a bug issue. You could record the installation, screen capture, record the installation to do technical videos to show other people how to work through that. You can report on your use to your peers. So if you found a good program that works for a particular use, then you can tell your colleagues about that. You can advocate for swaps. So if you find a good open source alternative to something that you or your organization is using as a vendor solution, you can advocate for a swap. The more often we move to open source solutions, the stronger the community and the code base will be. You can do what I call the 80% search, which is when you are going out to see if you need to develop something, see if you can use an existing solution that meets at least 80% of your needs. And if it does, it might be worth consideration of doing what's called either reaching out to that repository group community to see if they would like to collaborate for that extra 20%, because then they could add it as new features to their existing project, or it might be worth then at that point taking a fork of that project and developing it on your own. You can sign up for alpha and beta testing, which is early implementations of the code base that are going to come out where you can be a early adopter and early user and the implicit agreement then is that you will report back your experience to the developer team, the community team, to help them understand what new features they might need to develop. So those are a lot of ways that you can contribute without committing code. Not done. And I could probably give this talk for hours, and I won't, I promise. This is the last in-depth slide, but I won't. But the point is, wherever you are on your journey, if you're passionate about moving open source forward, you can help today. So this is what I do most of the time, which is advocating. Here are a couple of ways you can advocate. You can speak at conferences, whether it's a digital conference or an in-person conference, summits, your internal organization meetings, boards, wherever you can promote the voice of open source. Speak early, speak often, speak well. You can educate. So I still spend an awful lot of time doing this, and I think most people do, but this will never go away. This is a fundamental part of our community. You need to educate people on what exists in open source, what open source can do, and I think that those are evolving conversations. So what you say today may be different than what you would say a year from now, and I hope that's the case. But educate. Right now, we're having a really interesting discussion where we're trying to determine, the education effort turned into an exploratory analysis where we're trying to determine some very interesting intellectual property issues in the open source space. You can facilitate shifts inside your own organization from vendor solutions to open source solutions, from pure engineering to more inclusive technology communities, from technology solutions to other types of solutions. There's a movement for art as open source. There's a movement for a lot of artistic approaches artistic approaches and content areas as open source now. You can blog, you can sponsor with your financial dollar. You can fund for, whether that's a department or an organization level. You can donate. So if you could donate your facility for the use of an open source event, or donate your restaurant or food for a meetup that is organized by a local source group. You can donate swag or gift cards or whatever it is that your open source group is needing. And I encourage you to reach out when you're hosting your open source community efforts. It's a grassroots community efforts as much as any other, and your local institutions and companies are going to be very favorable at helping support your mission. You can, as I said, you can write blogs. If you find a project that you love, for me, the one that we found most recently that I love the most is free speech. You can check out some of our blogs on it if you search for Beep Source on Twitter and YouTube. But you find a project that you love, go talk about it. Go tell people what's great about it. Organize. I do a lot of this too. My team does a lot of this as well. But you can organize the project, right? So step into that project, look and do a healthy project checklist, see if it has everything that it needs. If not, reach out to the maintainer and see if you can help get those things created. Still no code involved, but you're helping create a better package for that project. It may be missing a code of conduct. It may be missing a disclaimer for its intended use. It may be missing a contributors list. It could be missing a lot of things that are optional, certainly, but things that would help add a little more polish and make the project a little more accessible. You can monitor project health. So maybe you're a metrics person and you can get the data off the back end of the GitHub API and monitor the health of the projects that are sitting inside your organization or a particular project that you're passionate about. And you can create a good dashboard or just let them know how many stars and forks on a regular basis and kind of gauge that. Now, if the project is headed in a monitoring allows you to make data-driven decisions at a moment's notice, right? So giving that information to the community allows them to decide what to do next. And there are a lot of decisions to make along the product lifecycle that can be made and should be considered, but having that data is the first step to being able to make that decision. You could become a release manager or a scrum master or something for the team if you have that time to donate to help them stay on task and prioritize their features and backlog. You could organize events. Ranging from local meetups to national or international conferences. There's an appetite for these in many areas, and the community is growing, but it takes a lot to organize these events. You can find and recommend speakers for those events. So if you heard a great talk today, and I'm sure that you've heard a ton of them, keep them in mind for the next time you or someone you know is organizing an event and reach out and say, hey, would you love to come speak on that or a related topic? Again, it'd be really helpful for us as we organize our next event. You can maintain GitHub organizations. Go look holistically across an entire organization. This is something that my team does for our company. And it does involve a lot of decisions. It's more project management mindset that we're talking about when we're talking about organizing. So if you're very project management focused, very strategic, organizing is probably a great place for you to contribute. And this is something that is very often needed in every project and every organization. Last category for non-coders is mentoring. So we're starting to toe dip a little bit into code here, but so you could review code. If you are learning code and you're a dabbling engineer or getting familiar with that space, then you can review code. It often helps. You can often find a lot of issues when you're new because you're still trying, you know the semantics pretty well. You can grow communities. So growing communities is about making connections. So you might say, hey, I just met DB. She runs an OSPO at a large organization. You run an OSPO at a large organization. Maybe you two should meet. And that's how you can grow a community. Or you can say, hey, I'm going to host a local meetup. All I'm going to do is find the location and the pizza, and buy the pizza and, cash out the bar tab at the end of the night, but that's what I'm going to do. And you might bring more people just like you to the kitchen. So you might say, hey, I'm more project management focused, or I'm more advocacy focused, but I had a really great experience in open source. Here's how you can contribute. Let's get you engaged. This is not the only way that I have thought about how we can grow in our contributions to open source, how we can make open source an environment that is contributions by everyone. If we think about this as both a community of coders and non-coders together, moving through a continuum of maturity from getting started through expert level, there are a lot of things that we can do. In this visual, I've grouped them into community support, events, and contributions to open source and advocacy, and then group them into getting started, beginner, intermediate, and expert. In the beginning, you join communities, you start with design, you help others, you offer product support, which is much needed. Then you move into improving the software that you use when you are a coder and that you rely on. But if you're not a coder, you can help start the swap from vendor to open source solutions on your own computer or in your organization. When you're in the intermediate level, you may be starting to speak at conferences or host or grow meetups. You may have already been promoting open source efforts or OSPO efforts with social media. You may now become more of an influencer in this area. You could be helping to write new features or take features out of backlogs and projects for coders. You can start closing issues on projects. And at the end of the journey, right, that's when you are developing the roadmap, starting to bring that strategy into the open source, maybe becoming a maintainer in a community, joining boards, setting vision, direction. But you can be a leader advocate too. You could be hosting conferences. You can be hosting hackathons. You can be serving on boards. You can be doing a plethora of activities focused around open source advocacy. And it is a community that needs to be built by coders and non-coders alike. Bringing those non-coders to the table and making them feel welcome will be key to our success in that effort. And I challenge you to talk to your brightest non-coder friends about open source, your colleagues about open source, and ask and get them involved. Bring them in. Give them the best red carpet welcoming experience anybody has ever had when they're asked to come volunteer on a project. Get your organization to support these efforts. Get this as a recognized volunteer activity. I urge you to find that friend, the brightest friend that you know who's not yet involved in open source, and bring them along for the ride. Or if you are the friend, you are passionate about open source, you want to help, you're not a coder, ask your brightest coding buddy. And if you say, hey, I want to contribute to open source, and show them this talk, if you two can't figure it out together, I give you permission to email me at dbabjack, BABJACK at optum.com, and I will help you both on that journey. Let's do this together.